Morning people, welcome back to F Politics. I am so angry right now because Labour just handed Nigel Farage the keys to Downing Street and he knows it. And the only silver lining is that after you finish watching this video, we'll all be on the same page and so we can move forward and fix this together. Because remember, the entire narrative of the right, especially the far right, is that the left don't care about the British people, that they care more about foreigners than this country. And now Nigel Farage has a video that he can share that effectively proves that when it comes to Labour. Because you know that hotel in Epping, the one with all the protesters outside, the one that's housing people who've come to this country seeking asylum, the one with the court case about whether or not the Home Office was allowed to keep using that hotel to house asylum seekers. And Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson was just questioned on Sky News about some of the arguments that they made in court about this case.
Your lawyers, under your guidance, have said in terms that the rights of asylum seekers are more important than the rights of local people in Epping Forest. Would you at least acknowledge that that is what they will hear? And it's up to you. Ministers can say, we agree with that, or we don't agree with it. You can't simply say, let's balance things. Do you agree with what your lawyers said, or don't you?
Yes, of course we do.
So my question is, why is Labour so shit? Like, I'm not a fan of Labour from a moral standpoint. Some of the decisions that they have made, in fact, a lot of the decisions they've made in the last year or so, 4 years or so, are morally reprehensible. But you would at least think, alright, if these people are prioritising the game of politics over the actual people involved, at least they should be good at the game of politics, right? But no. You just allowed a clip on national TV to exist of you saying that the rights of foreigners were more important than the rights of Brits. That is a train that you set in motion that Nigel Farage will ride into Downing Street. And the crazy thing about it is, she didn't have to say that. If you look at the actual court judgment, it says the Home Office has tried to argue that some of the public interests in play are not equal, and that the Home Office was trying to assert some kind of hierarchy of rights, specifically Article 3 of the European Convention on Human Rights about the right to not be tortured or face degrading treatment. So what we're talking about here is A, the fact that these people who've come to the UK seeking asylum would otherwise have faced degrading treatment or torture in their home countries. We're also talking about the fact that new asylum seekers do not have the legal right to work in the UK yet. They need to go through the asylum process in order to get their working permits. And so if they were not housed in those hotels, they would starve in the street. Those are the rights that we're talking about when it comes to the people claiming asylum. Whereas the rights of those protesters are what? Just to not have asylum seekers nearby? So when Bridget Phillipson was questioned about are the rights of asylum seekers more important than the rights of local people, what she should have said was, what specific rights are you talking about? Because the whole point of human rights is we as humans are all equal, entitled to the same rights. However, the right to not starve in the street or be tortured is more important than the right to be able to use your local hotel for brunch. So all Labour had to do was make it clear that it was not about saying that the rights of foreigners are more important than the rights of local people, but that they are simply trying to make sure that everybody's rights are protected. Instead, they have allowed a clip to exist online that Nigel Farage is now proudly sharing that shows Labour saying that the rights of foreigners are more important than the rights of local people. That easily hands Nigel Farage the keys to Downing Street at the next election, and this is why we should all be on the same page. Because Nigel Farage's Reform Party has been leading the polls for months, like they're way ahead of Labour and have been for a while, which means that they are set to be the next government, which means that Nigel Farage, the man behind Brexit, the man behind the Breaking Point poster, the man whose own political allies say is basically the modern day version of Adolf. He is set to be our next Prime Minister unless something changes. And he's not going to do that with some huge majority of the votes. He's going to do that on barely 30% of the vote. Because that is how the UK's voting system currently works. All that matters is which party comes first, hence the name first past the post. It doesn't matter if they only get 30% of the votes. If they got more than the other parties, then the remaining 70% of the votes are simply thrown away. For example, right now Labour has 62% of the seats in Parliament, even though only 34% of voters actually voted for them, which means the remaining 66% of voters basically have no effect on policy. So how do we solve that? Because Labour doesn't seem capable of beating reform. According to the polls, the Greens are still middling around the low teens when it comes to vote share. And if you think that Jeremy Corbyn on his own can fix this problem, he is less popular than Nigel Farage. Why? Because Nigel Farage has the right. They all love him. Jeremy Corbyn has managed to piss off the left, the centre, and the right. So yes, you and the people you know might passionately love Jeremy Corbyn, just like you and the people you know in 2016 thought that Brexit was a ridiculous idea that nobody would ever vote for. Now you can complain about smears, you can complain that he was doing his best over Brexit, but ultimately he is not a popular man. That is the reality we're living with. So he, on his own, cannot defeat Nigel Farage. It is going to take a concerted effort from everybody who considers themselves to be progressive to defeat Nigel Farage. Which means that unless Labour changes its tune on everything from taxing the rich to Brexit to Palestine to climate change, then no single party is going to have more votes than Nigel Farage at the next election, and he will be the Prime Minister. Which means that the only option outside of that is to make it so that Nigel Farage cannot get majority control in Parliament off a minority of the votes. Which means that you need to treat changing our voting system to one where all votes count equally as a national emergency. Which means that every single political conversation that you have has to include the fact that the UK is functionally not a democracy because the majority of votes simply don't count. You need to make sure that every single person you come into contact with knows that the reason the UK doesn't have a functioning democracy, the reason the people you're meeting don't have proper democratic power, is because Keir Starmer is refusing to give it to us. You need to make sure that every person you meet knows that the majority of people in this country think the same way they do. Because the majority of people in the UK want to tax the rich more. The majority of people in the UK want to go back into the EU. The majority of people in the UK want to stop selling weapons to Israel. But if a party can get majority control in Parliament based on a minority of the votes, then the majority of wishes across the country are fucking meaningless. And Keir Starmer is the reason for that. So we need to do absolutely everything that is peaceful to get him to shift immediately. I'm Femi. Make sure you follow F Politics if politics doesn't F you. Have a great week.